Howdy, and welcome everybody to the August 8th Kubernetes community meeting. First things first, as always, we could use someone to take notes during the community meeting. This helps people who are not able to attend because of time zones or whatever else get a quick capsule of what happened at the community meeting and what they might want to fast forward through the video to watch. So if somebody is able to take notes, please just type your name in under note taker right there. Thanks a lot. So then second, I need to tell everybody this meeting, like other meetings of Kubernetes, adheres to the Kubernetes Code of Conduct. So please be a responsible adult. Also, we are going to be recording it, so you have two reasons to be a responsible adult because you are in public. So don't say anything on this meeting that you would not want to be part of an archival recording. With all of that said, we are going to go ahead and, as usual, start this meeting with a demo of a Kubernetes-related project. This morning's demo is Pulumi, which is Kubernetes clusters as code. Levi Blackstone is going to be demonstrating that for us.
All right. Hi, folks. Let me just share my screen here. Okay. Can everybody see that? Okay, so I'll just go through a few slides here and then jump right into the code and a quick demo here. So Pulumi is open source toolchain for managing cloud infrastructure and applications as software. Today, I'm going to be focusing on the Kubernetes SDK of that. So just a quick overview of Pulumi. Basically, we expose a bunch of open source SDKs to create cloud infrastructure and applications. The programming model is a declarative steady state, so very similar to Kubernetes. You tell it what you want, not exactly how to do it. The engine figures that out for you. The steady state declarations built using so-called real programming languages, so TypeScript, JavaScript, Python. It's not DSL, so no YAML. Each SDK covers all the major public clouds plus Kubernetes. So first, a couple of motivating examples. So the first one, provisioning Kubernetes clusters. So often you want an easy way to provision a Kubernetes cluster on the public cloud of your choice. So that could be AWS or Google or Azure or even locally. Typically, this is fairly complex when you're setting up all the identity roles and kind of the different resources necessary. And it's different for each of the cloud providers. So this ends up being kind of hard to integrate with a CI/CD system. So that ends up being a barrier for creating clusters on demand. So a lot of times people will end up spinning up one long-running cluster and then just using that. Motivating example two, sometimes you want to deploy an application to multiple clusters. So each cloud provider's Kubernetes service has subtle differences. So a lot of the API looks very similar, but for example, if you deploy a service with type load balancer, the provisioned endpoint will show up in a little bit different spot across the different cloud providers. So you want to avoid the kind of the lock-in to one cloud. It's nice to be able to test if your application can deploy to different clouds like that. And then the second part of that is how can you easily configure the connection settings for each cluster. So the way that you can solve this with Pulumi, so I've written a TypeScript program that declares my desired state here. So in this case, I'm provisioning three public cloud Kubernetes cluster, plus I have a Docker desktop cluster running locally. And then I'm deploying the Quarty app, which includes a deployment plus a service on each cluster. So I write the program, I run a Pulumi update, it creates a plan. If I accept that, then it executes the plan and provisions that for me. So with that, this code is available publicly on GitHub with this link, and I'll jump over to that. So this is what my top level application looks like. So you can see here, I'm creating Kubernetes clusters. So AKS, EKS, GKE. So then down here, it's just creating references to these clusters, selecting an image tag. And then here, I'm just using a for loop, looping over these clusters and deploying this demo application here. So I'll hop over to the demo app. So the demo app here is just a class. So in my constructor, I'm declaring my deployment plus my service. So up here, you can see it's just a Kubernetes app v1 deployment. We exposed the entire Kubernetes API surface. Our SDK is mostly auto-generated from the open API spec. So you could deploy any version of the resources you want. And then the actual spec looks just like you would expect from working with the YAML or JSON with Kubernetes. So I've declared my application here and my service. I'm exposing the endpoint here. And then down here at the bottom, I've got this app URL. So it will take the address that comes out of the service and create a URL for me. So I'll hop over to my terminal real quick. So just because the clusters take a while to provision, I've gone ahead and stood those up already and deployed the application. So this is what the output looks like once the update's complete. So you can see I've got endpoints across the 4 different clusters here. So I'll just jump into that real quick. So you can just see I've got my QWERTY app live, and I can click around in here. I've got the liveness and readiness probes going. So I guess just to show you what the update process looks like, I'll go ahead and change the version of the deployment I'm running here. So I'm switching from the blue tag to the green tag. So I'm skipping the preview step here. If you just run an update, it'll show you a preview of the diff that it's planning to run, and then you can select whether or not you want to actually run that. So just take a few seconds, and then what it's going to do is go through that for loop and deploy the updated tag to each one of my clusters here. Hopefully here in just a moment. While I'm waiting for that, I'll jump back over here. So I guess I'll go ahead and look at what some of the actual cluster code looks like. So you saw up at the top where I was creating the managed clusters. So this is all done in code as well. So you're able to provision all of the resources that you need for the cluster. So here on the EKS case, it's provisioning VPC and all of the resources you need for networking and identity. And then it creates a cluster, and you can set all of these parameters, like how many nodes, like which instance types. So this looks a little bit different for each one of the providers. So this one's GKE. You can see I'm setting up a kubeconfig here. And then the AKS one. So you can do everything from generating passwords to setting up all of your service principals and identity, networking, and then here's the Kubernetes cluster. And the nice thing about doing this is you can write libraries like this to abstract all that complexity here. So your app developer, all they need is just this one-line function call, and then you can provision yourself a cluster. So it makes it really easy for testing. Okay, so back over here, this finally finished. You can see that it tells you what it's updated. So it changed the spec on each one of these deployments and gave me these URLs. So now if I hop over here, you can see that this is now running the green instead of the blue that it was previously. Let's see. I guess one other thing that might be of interest, this is our service here. So I can come in here and look at kind of detailed logs of everything that it was doing. So this is what it would have looked like had I previewed it. You can look at details about exactly what it's going to change, and then details on what it did change, and all of the logs here in one place. So it looks like I get about 2 minutes here. So I guess one thing that's interesting to note about this, Pulumi will automatically figure out dependencies as you're referencing things here. So you'll notice I was able to create this app URL. This won't actually have useful data filled out until these things are provisioned. So first I've got my deployment, and then I've got my service. So then the service is referenced down here, and I'm able to to say status load balancer ingress, and then here's the difference between GKE and EKS. So it's either host name or IP. But then based on that, I can pull that out into an app URL. So it figures out the dependencies automatically. So I think that's pretty much all I wanted to show. So I guess you can have a couple minutes back. I don't know if there's any questions.
Let's see if we have any questions from chat. Okay, I don't see any questions in the chat. I do have one question for you. So it seems like maintaining all of the compatibility and API code with the various cloud providers has got to be a huge ongoing effort.
Right. So, I mean, that would be up to the application developer to make sure that they were handling those differences. We expose all of the APIs that you would need to do that, and you can write libraries that would handle those details.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for the demo.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Next up is the release update. Oh, and for everybody who's watched the demo, etc., there's a link to the slides and a link to his example demo there in the notes. So next up, we're doing the release updates. Jeffrey Sika, one of our shadows for the 1.16 release, is going to update us on the many things going on with releases this week and last week.
Hello, everyone. Currently, we are in week 6 of the 1.16 release. Things that have just happened, I believe it was 2 days ago. Yesterday, we released 1.16 Alpha 3. That is going to be the final alpha release for 1.16. The big things coming up, we have the first beta release coming up next week on Tuesday, August 13th. And the ever impending code freeze is coming is at the end of the month at August 29th. So keep that in mind. There have been many patches that have been released. There were several CVEs that came out. I believe they were released August 5th. So we're talking about 115.2, 114.5 and 113.9. They were addressing one CVE that one was an incomplete fix for a CVE, and then an actual fix for kubectl CP directory traversal vulnerability, as well as API servers allowing access to custom resources via the wrong scope. So those are bad, but they have been patched. Please update your clusters. All of these are announced on the Kubernetes Security Announce mailing list, as well as Kubernetes Announce. We have additional patch releases coming up targeting August 19th, and those will be 115.3, 114.6, and 113.10. The cherry pick deadline for those is going to be August 15th, so you have just about a week. And again, all of these dates are always announced on Kubernetes Dev, and that is me. Does anyone have any release questions? Josh, please take it back.
Thank you very much for the updates in the release. And so yet another week that you need to update everything, which of course is going to be lots of fun for people who have not yet moved off of 112. Since none of this is being updated for 112, which has been EOL for a while now. We're going to move into our next section, which is the SIG updates. We actually have 2 SIGs today updating us on current status and activities. We're going to start out with SIG contributor experience with Chair Paris Pittman.
Hello, everyone. I wish I could hear hellos back from you all sometimes, when we're on these huge calls. Can I
Hello.
Hello.
Okay.
Hello.
Hey, Paris.
Hi, Paris.
Hey, Paris. Hi, everyone. All right, let me share my screen. All right. As usual, contributor experience is on fire, meaning we are cranking out work, y'all. There are 30 31,000 contributors the last time I checked, over 190 repositories. That means there's a lot of y'all and a little bit of us. So I'm going to present some of the work that we have been accomplishing and are undertaking for both the last 3 months and the next 3 months. Cool. So first things first, we have taken on the cluster lifecycle approach to meetings. We have a lot of sub-projects now that I'll go through during the presentation, but we are taking the sub-project approach and doing, hold on, if you can see my screen still, I don't know if I just shared, did I just share the presentation or did I share the browser? Okay, cool. So you can see on our meeting agenda that we've broken out by sub-projects, which helps us do the work and also helps you figure out what it is, A, we do, and B, how you can get involved. So we have events, community management, GitHub management, Slack infra, contributor documentation, and mentoring. And that's full steam ahead. Oh, and also we've moved our weekly meetings to bi-weekly meetings so that the smaller sub-projects, it's not like we're always meeting. And it'll help us capture that a little bit better. Second thing about meetings that I wanted to bring up is that our APAC team is rolling. They meet, I think it's bi-weekly now as well. Special shout out to Yang, Allison, Nikita, and so many others who are super dedicated to bringing the contributor experience to other areas outside of the Pacific Coast. And we really, really appreciate y'all a ton. So they have really big plans on going to do contributor experience related talks and also our new contributor workshop at several different summit locations that CNCF is doing and things like that. If this is something that you're interested in, or if you have coworkers or people in other time zones that are like, hey, we can never meet your meetings, this is for them. So the first thing I always want to talk about is mentoring and contributor growth. That is the most important part of us at this point and the most important part of the project, at least in my opinion. No, really, this is actually super important. Burnout is a thing that we've all heard about and know about. And the only way to get help with that is to raise people up with you. That's literally the only way. So what we're doing in contributor experience, we actually broke down and have a mentoring sub-project, and we had our first meeting this morning. We are basing our programs around contributor personas, things like students, code reviewers, approvers, and other needful areas of the project. Some of the things that we're seeing that are really, really, really helping and really helpful right now is succession planning via teams. So for instance, one team that you all are very known and accustomed to is the release team. The release team is awesome. Y'all have built shadow roles. That is really a great way to go in open source. So we've taken this concept and applied it in multiple other areas, including the events team, which I'll show you in a minute for contributor summits. But also we're taking that a little bit farther and doing triage teams that have role books and things like that. Anything that your SIG is doing where it is a clear-cut role, that's a role, and that can be explicit, and we can advertise for that. And other contributors really like that because it's clear-cut, it gives them an on-ramp, and it's not ambiguously jump in and help. Other mentoring at scale initiatives, and I say at scale because one-on-one with 31,000 contributors doesn't scale. Learning by doing does. So we've been concentrating and getting other SIGs on board with doing things like code-based tours, live sessions like API review codes, triage. This gives us the ability to put it on our YouTube channel and then syndicate that and put it on our official documentation so that contributors can onboard faster and at the quality that we need them to onboard. And it's not just bland documentation. We've also learned that from both academia and our real world experiences that not everybody reads contributor documentation. Some people actually watch videos. So why are we catering to one persona when there are multiple personas here that we could help out and grow? New contributor office hours is also a thing that is really helpful. So if your SIG gets a lot of new contributors that come into your Slack channel and say things like, hey, how do I get started? And it's, that can carry a lot of time burden. Have a once a month new contributor office hours and point folks to that and then get them acclimated there and get them an on-ramp and things along those lines. Cluster Lifecycle has done this. We do this sort of with Meet Our Contributors as well. So any of those things are really, really great for SIGs to do. So if you are in a SIG, please think about adopting some of these things. Another thing that we're taking advantage of is KubeCon face-to-face mentoring sessions. I would say about 60% of the people that show up actually show up with contributing questions. Most people think that it's all end user questions, and that is definitely a myth. So this is an opportunity for us to get in front of people face-to-face. And then group mentoring. This is where 10 people to get together with 3 mentors in a group, and they all peer mentor each other to a goal, and that goal is our contributor ladder. And we need other SIGs to adopt this. I can't go into super details right now just because of time. But if your SIG is like, wow, we really need more approvers, group mentoring is the best way to do it at scale. So reach out to us. And of course, Meet Our Contributors. Here's Steven's lovely face right in front. This is a monthly YouTube series that we do that sees at least, I'd say, 30 people live end to end. And then at least 100 recording end to end. So this is reaching massive people at scale, and this is really only being talked about during on contributor-based advertising channels, which means that we are saturating the contributor market, which is exactly what we are looking to do. This is mentors on demand. So if you're saying, hey, I always wanted to be a mentor, I just don't have the time to do it, I bet you can carve out 1 hour a year and come on Meet Our Contributors. GitHub Management. This is why I feel like most of you know us from and have talked to people like Christoph and Nikita and Bob and so many other of our awesome folks that take care of our 190 plus whatever it is at this point. I feel like I can't even keep tabs on it. 190 repositories. And they're doing all things automation. They want to make your lives a ton easier. And we would actually love to do more project-wide stuff if we could get consensus, which is always the hardest part, as we know in Kubernetes. But here's some of the things that they're doing with automation. I'm not going to sit here and read through all of them, but it has to do with how we triage and how you are merging PRs and our owners files and how you're interacting with our owners files, which makes your experience as a contributor much better. They're also working on other tooling, specifically GitOps for community management. This is where they're creating new repos for you. We have more than over 30 new repositories. I think it's in like the last 3 to 6 months, if I can recall my data range there. And then they're also processing a ton of membership requests, which is great. The membership requests give the contributor access to talk to the bots a little bit more clearly and interact with them in better ways. So if people are saying, hey, the bots aren't wonderful, ask them if they're a member. If they are, they might have a little bit better of an experience. And then we've also built out some project websites. I think Mr. Bobby Tables had a huge play in that. So thanks to him. And that is you can get that information in the Kubernetes/org issue template area. Upcoming stuff, we are renaming FadoBot. I think it is, I don't know if it's decided, somebody yell out if it is, but I think it's going to be Kate's triage robot. Not sure how official that is, but that's what it is at this point on this slide. And then we're also going to be doing a lot of auditing of owners files. So if you're in a SIG and your SIG has some stale owners files, this is for you. And any SIG at any time can do owners files hygiene. Feel free. That's not necessarily on contributor experience. It's on your SIGs. And then also we're deprecating Kubernetes Incubator in favor of Kubernetes SIGs. So if you are one of those lone projects on Incubator, it's time to get to the SIGs. Contributor documentation. This is one of the projects that we have that's living, that's always going, that always has issues files, that always has broken links, things like that, because it is a living beast. We have so many things going on within contributor documentation at this point. We have the contributor guide itself. We have the contributor cheat sheet, which George, Edouard from Outreachy, and so many other people have been contributing to, which is so lovely. It's a one-stop shop for people who maybe have already contributed to open source before and they just need some quick links. And then there's the developer guide folder, which has now been reorganized so that it has some SIG ownership in there as well of some of those technical documentation pieces. And then there's the non-code contributor guide, which is a great initiative. Noah, Jonas, and so many other people that have been chugging along with that to figure out what are the parts of the project that people can contribute to that you don't necessarily need to know Go to do. And then, of course, our contributor site that's been in progress for a while, but we are chugging along now and think that we have a good MVP. We're probably going to go out the door with the contributor guide, the events, and the calendar for the first go. You can see the Netlify link there. And if you're interested in learning what kind of content is coming and if you can get involved and how you can get involved, there's the issue link right there. We also have a contributor documentation sub-project meeting at this point, and would love to see people there and would love to get more people invested and involved in this area of the project for sure. Oh, I think I have something in chat. Oh, George. And then, of course, community management. Community management is really kind of the day-to-day aspects that we have. So things like communication and other things that we're going to see in a second. This is really the stuff that's the non-GitHub pieces of the community infra. One of the things that we are still continuing to do is reduce the noise for chairs and tech leads to get them the information that they need very fast. Because as everyone knows in the project, there's 75 different communication platforms. So we need to make sure that they get the information that they need immediately. And we've also built a Slack channel for them. It's called Chairs and Tech Leads, and it is highly moderated just so they can have a place to play. Thank you, special thank you, humongous thank you actually to all of our moderators. We have so many who moderate both Zoom, YouTube, Slack, mailing lists, discuss.kubernetes.io, and so many more. If you're interested in policies, guidelines, moderators, how to be a moderator, etc., everything you need to know is in that link right there on that deck. Special shout out to Catherine as well. I give her shout outs all the time. She's amazing. She's been building a Slack automation that helps us keep this that really helps us keep this at bay, and this at bay meaning this like 80,000 person beast of a Slack instance, which has completely blown the scope of contributor experience, but we won't talk about that right now. But this is an awesome reporting function that I always want to remind people is there. So if you see something that in Slack that is not appropriate, you can click a button and pretty much report it now to the Slack admins, and the Slack admin team, as well as the code of conduct team, will see this and act accordingly. Events, my favorite part. San Diego Contributor Summit, 450 of you we are expecting on surfboards. Just kidding. I saw Lucky laugh. Lucky, you're going surfing with me, bro. You're going surfing. Anyway, we're planning in the open. This is I feel like the first event of any kind that I have been involved with that is this open, y'all. I just want to take a quick shout out to everybody that's involved with this. This is amazing. We have a project board, meetings. I mean, you can even see the content. You can see like down to the dotted I of what light switch we're going to switch off when for what. And it's so, so great. But this is also a call for proposals and talent. You're going to ask me why talent in a second, I'm sure. But call for proposals. So if you're out there and you're like, wow, I really wish all of our contributors knew how to do performance tests better, or conformance, or I really wish they could do my code reviews a little bit better, teach them. Call for proposals. And then the talent piece on Sunday night, we have the opportunity to potentially do a talent show. Anyway, so call for talent. If you play instruments, sing a song, teach karate, we want to hear about it. I want your whole selves. Anyway, almost now hiring too for Amsterdam for all leads. If you are interested in working the contributor summits next year, please reach out. And then the next major event that we are operating right now is the steering committee election. Steering committee is due for their yearly ballots. The steering committee is currently picking our election officers, and that should be coming in any second now. And then once that's set, everybody will see even more information about how you can be a steering committee member, how you can nominate someone, etc. So please look out for that. I hope everybody rocks the vote here. So how can you contribute? Join our meetings, of course. Be a mentor, yes, you, even if you've been with a project for 2 days. Spread our communications far and wide. We have a large project. Ask your SIGs, did you know that this thing was happening? Use good first issue and help wanted labels because that helps us help you. Join our triage team, build triage teams, and think about triage for your SIGs as we go forward. And we also need bloggers and lots of you. Why? Because we have a lot of contributor information. Clearly, I just took up almost 15 minutes of your time. And I probably could take up another 30 if I went into like hardcore details about what we do. This stuff needs to be discussed, needs to be talked about, needs to have a lot of eyeballs on it. And we want to put some of the human touches to some of the work that your SIGs are doing. Reach out. There is also some blogging issues in the community repo. Reach out to us. Take our survey. It's survey time. We have one every year and they get better and better. We are having a goal this time of 200 respondents, and we actually take some of the stuff that you say and create actionable results with it. And I want to actually show you some stuff that we did from last year's survey. So I'm going to go off the script a little bit here just to prove to you that we've done some cool stuff in this area. Hold on one second. I am switching my screen. Don't move. About to see Jeff's head really big, I think. All right. All right. So these are some of the really cool things that we got from the survey the last time. And this time we intend to take the entire survey and get a designer and do something along the lines of a Python developer report. If you saw that from JetBrains, it was so gorgeous and beautiful. And that would be amazing if we could do that for our contributors. So one of the questions we asked last time, which channel is most likely to reach you first? Kubernetes dev mailing list. I would love for that to be 99%. That should be like our canonical source of truth, right? It's hilarious that 24% of the people said Twitter. So clearly our contributor audience, we have a lot of folks on Twitter. All right. So does your employer support your contributions to Kubernetes? 66% and this was last September, y'all. So note last September, 66% of the people said, yes, it's a part of my job. I'm very curious to run this again. And 63% of the people said that they contribute at least several times a month. So what this says about the survey is we had a lot of active people respond. And then, which of the tooling do you find useful? This obviously wasn't that great of a question. We're going to probably remodel this a little bit so that we get better results. But you see, for the most part, everybody likes automatic merging of their approved PRs. Why wouldn't you? So I feel like that was a sort of an obvious deal, but we'll probably remodel that question a little bit better next time. And this one's a little bit about the contributor ladder. It doesn't have the question on it, but it's really just about saying, are you interested in growing to the contributor ladder here? And would you like mentorship in doing so? So yes, 81% of the people said, yes, they want to grow with us. And here's a really good blockers by contributor level chart that came from it, where we talked about what are some of the major blockers that you're having. Like number 1, it's not a problem. 5, I'm having a really hard time with this. And so, for instance, approvers said they're having a really hard time debugging test failures. Reviewers are having a really hard time debugging test failures. no idea this was even a thing. So no idea this was even a thing is the membership level. So that means there was people that took it that did not know that the contributor ladder was even a thing. So those folks said setting up their dev environment was the hardest. So they're probably like our newer folks, right, that need some help there. So all of this stuff we can take and make better programs with this data. What's the best part of the community meeting? This is where we like lost the dev stats, where we said no to dev stats. It didn't do so well on this. We actually took it off because it didn't do so well. But as you can see, most people like a lot of the things in the community meeting. They find it useful. Different person. I even did it by persona too. You can't see it on this graph, but I was very curious to see which persona likes what. And it was pretty much every persona likes everything. So congratulations to the community meeting. Y'all think this is fruitful. And then do you think Slack adds value to this project? That goes without saying. 82% of you said yes, it's useful for both users and contributors. So let's see, I think I'm pretty much done with the slides. Hold on, I think I had one more, which is where to find us. Yeah, but it's just where to find us, and that's in the deck. So any questions, concerns, comments? I'll take that as a no.
Hey, thank you very much, Paris.
Thank you.
For all of that stuff. So next up, SIG scheduling. Bobby Salamat's going to tell us what scheduling is scheduling.
Yeah, thank you. So, and thanks and huge shout outs to SIG contributor and Perez for their effort. Unfortunately, my updates are not as interesting, but I'll try to give you a couple of good news about new features that we are building in SIG scheduling. In 1.15, we built the first version of what we call the scheduling framework. This is basically an attempt to make the scheduler a more pluggable piece of software, or more pluggable component. So far, scheduler has been like a monolithic piece of software that has been hard to change if you wanted to add something to the scheduler, or if you wanted to customize it for your own cluster. So the scheduling framework is an effort to change that and make the scheduler a pluggable architecture so that various users can customize it to their needs. And also it helps us build more complex features without putting all the code in the core of the scheduler. We built a very early version of this in 1.15. It's an alpha version. It has a limited set of extension points, or basically plugs, only for reserve, unreserved, and prebind. I don't want to go through the details of what these things are, but if you're interested, you can go and look at the design doc for them and the cap for them. Another feature that we actually released with 1.15 was non-preemptible priority. So what is this about? So as you may know, pod priority helps you identify pods that are more important than others. So when your cluster is out of resources and some of these pods arrive, the scheduler will remove some of those less important ones in order to schedule more important ones. But what is this about, like non-preempting? If priority is non-preempting, why is it useful? In some clusters where a lot of batch workloads exist, non-preempting is important because one other aspect of priority is that it helps you schedule your pods with higher guarantees. Basically, if there are a lot of pending pods waiting to be scheduled, those which have higher priority go to the head of the scheduling queue. A non-preempting priority that has basically a pod that has non-preempting priority and has a high priority goes to the head of the scheduling queue. but it does not preempt any of the existing or running workloads. This is useful in a lot of clusters that run batch workloads, because in those clusters, people do not want to remove existing workloads. They just want to specify that some of their workloads should be scheduled first as soon as the cluster gets some resources, or as soon as some of the existing workloads leave the cluster. So this is about that. It exists in 1.15. We also designed event pod spreading. I'm going to talk about this feature in my next slide. This is also a new feature for the scheduler. We managed to design this in 1.15, but due to some API review bandwidth, we could not land this feature in 1.15. But the good news is that 1.16 is going to have it. Also, we improved monitoring and reliability of the scheduler in 1.15. Nothing very notable there. We have more metrics to monitor and stuff like that. And what's coming in 1.16? So, as I said, one of the important features that we are releasing with 1.16 is event pod spreading. What is this about? So, as you may know, a lot of people want to have higher reliability for their workloads, and they achieve this by spreading their workloads among multiple failure domains. For example, people schedule their services in multiple zones. If one zone goes down, the other zones stay up. How do you achieve this? So first of all, the scheduler has some default way of scheduling. By default, it basically spreads workloads in multiple failure domains, but those are limited to nodes and zones only, and it's not guaranteed. With even pod spreading, we give users a way to specify that their pods should be spread among multiple, in arbitrary, basically, failure domains. So, for example, if you have 2 zones and you have 10 pods, the scheduler, and you actually specify that you want to spread among zones, the scheduler automatically puts 5 pods in each zone. We had anti-affinity in the past, so you could specify anti-affinity for your pods. But the problem with anti-affinity is that if you basically force it, if you have pod anti-affinity, it only puts 1 pod per failure domain. Even pod spreading removes that limitation. You can specify how you want to spread your pods. This was a common request from a lot of users. The good news is that they can have it in 1.16. And as I said, we built the very first version of the scheduling framework in 1.15. In 1.16, we are going to have all extension points. So the scheduling framework is going to be ready to use, although we decided not to promote it to beta in order to get higher confidence for our API. So we're going to keep it in alpha feature for in 1.16, but hopefully we can get some feedback from users and promote it to beta in 1.17. And finally, we are also implementing some resource bin packing. This is also a feature that helps some users achieve better resource utilization in their clusters by putting or packing basically more pods on a fewer number of nodes. This is important if you want to achieve higher resource utilization and reduce the cost of your cluster. How these plans affect you? Generally, it should not affect most of our users. All these new changes are expected to be fully backward compatible. The only thing is that the scheduling framework allows people to build all sorts of custom plugins for the scheduler. Some of these custom plugins may not work with cluster autoscaler. We're trying to basically make it possible for autoscaler to identify all these plugins and use them, but the scheduler is more, the new scheduling framework is more flexible than the simulation. This is a little bit too much technical details, but anyway, so autoscaler has some simulation. In the simulation part of autoscaler, certain things, certain new features of the scheduling framework are not implementable. So we're gonna basically document everything and tell users which one of these features could be supported in cluster autoscale and which ones cannot be supported. And finally, where you can find us, here is some information for you. The homepage for scheduling, and we have a Slack channel which is fairly active. Please feel free to reach us with any questions. And I guess the last bullet point is out of date. That's all. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for that update. Looking forward to the eventual completion of the scheduling framework.
Yeah, thank you.
And the parts that are there so far. Speaking as somebody who runs databases on Kubernetes, the spread pods thing is really nice.
I know this has been a feature that a lot of users have been asking for, and finally it's landing in 1.16.
Yeah, cool. Okay, well, so thank you. So we're now on to our announcements. A first announcement, as Paris mentioned, we are soliciting session proposals for the 2019 San Diego Contributor Summit. If you are going to be at the Contributor Summit, if you're a contributor, consider leading or even requesting a session. For pre-programmed sessions, we're going to have both. We're going to have presentation sessions, we're going to have discussion sessions, and we're going to have some contributor-focused workshops in addition to the new contributor, intermediate contributor, day-long workshops. So we are looking for all of those things. Speaking of KubeCon, I wanted to remind any SIG leads who are on this call or who are watching the video that the SIG intro and deep dive session proposals are due August 16th. Your SIG should decide on what sessions you're going to propose for your SIG sessions and submit them soon. You've got like a week to figure those out and submit them, so please do that. Somebody asked here for the security audit. I can speak about that, but if the person who put it on the agenda wants to make this announcement. Okay, apparently not. So go ahead and check out the CNCF blog. The CNCF has published the results of the Kubernetes security audit with a whole bunch of findings documents. This has already had the effect of triggering a security release to fix some of the things that they found. There's a whole bunch of other useful information, particularly again, for our contributors who work on all the components of Kubernetes, there's a long discussion in there about how the complexity of configuration for Kubernetes leads to exploits of production implementations because operators are actually configuring their clusters incorrectly because they just can't figure out how to configure them correctly. Please read that section. Hopefully that will inform thinking on our API and management design in the future. And there are lots and lots of other stuff in there. So let's go to shoutouts. From Jason, we have shoutouts to Justin and Amorai. Sorry, I don't actually know whose handle that is. For getting the AWS credentials created and updated for the cluster API provider AWS testing using Boscos. So the automated testing is now fixed there. Paris says, thanks to the Meet Our Contributors mentors, Elena Hashman and Nikita, who give great advice on KEPs and getting started and a bunch of other things. And also thanks to Jeffrey for fixing YouTube for Meet Our Contributors. Jim Angel shouts out to DIMS and don't know whose handle that is, CODYC for assisting new contributors navigate Git issues in SIGDoc Slack. So shout outs for everybody. Remember, you can post shout outs in the shout out Slack channel at any time. We will collect those for the week, and it's also a good way just to show people that you appreciate what they did. So thanks everybody, and that is our community meeting for the week. As usual, if you miss something in the middle of the meeting, the recording will go up pretty soon, and there are links to slides from all the presentations today. So thank you very much, and see everybody on Slack and GitHub and the mailing lists.